Most of us know the scene: a stable, a baby, and a bright star in the eastern sky that heralded the Nativity. We call it the Star of Bethlehem, the center of the whole Christmas story. But when you actually look at the biblical text, things get a bit strange. For instance, the birth of Jesus is mentioned in only 2 of the 4 Gospels, Matthew and Luke. The story of the Magi and the star is found exclusively in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 2. It's a weird paradox, a cosmic event on a scale that moved professional astrologers, yet it's missing from other accounts. Some modern scholars even suggest the story of the star is a pious fiction added later. Was it a real celestial object or a symbolic narrative? Before we dive in, feel free to subscribe to the channel for more explorations like this.
Let's get our bearings. Bethlehem is a city in the West Bank, Palestine, sitting approximately 10 kilometers south of Jerusalem. It's a fascinating place. The name Bethlehem is derived from Hebrew and Aramaic, meaning house of bread. But in Arabic, the name is interpreted as house of meat. I've always wondered if those 2 meanings reflect the same underlying idea of sustenance. Now, the site identified by Christian tradition as the birthplace of Jesus is located just a few miles south of Jerusalem. Since the 2nd century, this specific spot has been revered. To preserve it, Constantine the Great commissioned the original church shortly after his mother Helena's visit in 325-326. By AD 339, the first church was completed. However, a fire in the 6th century, likely during the Samaritan revolts of 529, destroyed the original building. Byzantine Emperor Justinian, who reigned from 527 to 565, built a new basilica a number of years later. His version featured a porch, narthex, and a cruciform transept with 3 apses. Today, the Church of the Nativity is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's an imposing complex featuring bell towers, terraced gardens, and a pilgrimage route. Inside, you'll find a grotto and the Basilica of the Nativity, where Latin and Greek Orthodox, Franciscan, and Armenian denominations maintain their presence. It's a bit surreal to think that while the legions of pilgrims now walk these halls, the original site was just a dusty, humble stable. Now, let's look at the people involved. It all starts with a virgin named Mary, who was engaged to Joseph. We're talking about a time when Judea was under Roman rule, and the Roman calendar was used in Palestine. This is where things get complicated. Caesar Augustus issued a decree that the entire world should be taxed, a census that was first implemented when Cyrenius was the governor of Syria. Because of this, Joseph had to travel from the city of Nazareth in Galilee to the city of David, called Bethlehem in Judea, just to be taxed. Here's the thing. The distance from Nazareth to Bethlehem is approximately 95.5 miles. By camel, that's roughly 6.5 hours of travel. But according to Luke, Mary didn't just make that trip once. She traveled from Nazareth to the hill country of Judea to visit Elizabeth and Zachariah, staying with them for 3 months. Then she had to make the trip back and again. In total, Mary covered approximately 286.5 miles while pregnant, spending almost 19.5 hours on the road. I'm not entirely sure what to make of this part, but Matthew states that Joseph planned to divorce Mary upon discovering her pregnancy, a detail Luke doesn't mention. That's a heavy emotional weight to add to a grueling journey. Quiet descends on the small, cramped space after the initial struggle of arrival. Luke provides us with an oddly grounding detail here. The baby Jesus is wrapped in cloth and placed in a manger. It is not regal. It is improvised. This detail is specific to his account, and it forces you to reconcile the cosmic event with the reality of where it actually happened. Then the narrative shifts sharply. Angels are present during the events of Jesus' birth, interrupting the silence. But it is not the powerful who are summoned. The visitors are shepherds, those men who were out tending their fields by night when they came to see him. Think about that for a second. The most profound moment in this gospel narrative is not witnessed by anyone with political standing, but by people working the graveyard shift in the dirt. This inclusion, which only appears in Luke, changes the entire texture of the scene. Now, here is where the narrative shifts. We've seen the humble birth, but then comes the arrival of the Magi. Many people think the Magi and shepherds were at the stable at the same time, but that's actually incorrect. The wise men arrived in Bethlehem after Jesus was born, following a signal they saw at its rising in the east. Think about the scale of this. These men traveled westward from the east, covering a grueling 600 to 1,200 miles. That's roughly the distance from Baghdad to the Mediterranean coast. When they finally saw the star again, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. But who exactly were these people? The Bible doesn't mention 3 kings, but rather Magi. The term magus is the Latinized form of the ancient Greek transliteration magoi, which comes from an Iranian original. In fact, the word magic is actually derived from the word magus. These weren't just random travelers. They were a priesthood serving several religions, a priestly caste during the Seleucid, Parthian, and Sasanian periods. Some argue they were original followers and propagandists of Zoroaster, though that's disputed. They were religious scholars from Babylon, acting as astronomers and astrologists who viewed cosmic events as omens. This is where it gets interesting. There was a distinct difference between Persian Magi and Babylonian Magi. While Persian Magi were credited with profound religious knowledge, Babylonian Magi were often seen as imposters. Babylonia, as a whole, had a reputation for varied forms of wisdom, and these particular Magi, as Zoroastrian astrologer priests from a Persian clan, toured their own country, likely Babylon, to see the first sign. After that, they journeyed to Jerusalem to speak with King Herod, and then saw a second sign that led them to the child. Finally, they found the baby and presented him with 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, imagine the atmosphere in Jerusalem. The Magi traveled to Jerusalem to worship the child, but they didn't find a welcome committee. Instead, they walked right into the palace of King Herod, the Roman-appointed ruler of the region. Here's the thing. King Herod was completely unaware of the star's existence until the Magi told him. This news didn't just surprise him, it disturbed him. As the evil king, he was worried by the news of a new king. To get a steady answer, the king consulted his own scribes, priests, and teachers of the law. These men used Micah's prophecy to determine that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem in Judea, Javaid, the south of Jerusalem. According to Matthew 2:1, the birth of Jesus occurred during the time of King Herod. But Herod I didn't want to worship a rival. He plotted to eliminate Jesus, and that eventually led to him attempting to kill the infants of Bethlehem, specifically the male Hebrew babies aged 2 and under, in what is known as the Massacre of the Innocents.
Now we shift from the biblical narrative to the science of the stars. Scholars have been debating the potential causes for the Star of Bethlehem since at least the 13th century. If we look at the scientific explanations, we're talking about a supernova, a comet, a solar flare, or an alignment of planets. I've been looking into the work of Dr. Matt Bothwell from the University of Cambridge, who breaks down the science behind this. He suggests the most likely explanation is a comet. But if you want to go back to the historical theories, we have to look at Johannes Kepler. In the early 17th century, this German astronomer and mathematician proposed that the Star of Wonder was actually a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. Kepler was the first to calculate that a triple conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn occurred in 7 BC. This is where it gets technical, but bear with me. Jupiter and Saturn are the largest in the solar system and some of the brightest objects visible in the night sky, which makes them look incredibly bright during a conjunction. In December 1603, Kepler observed a single conjunction of Jupiter and satellites in Sagittarius in the morning sky. He noticed this 1603 conjunction was astrologically significant because it happened in a constellation of the fiery Trigon. To understand the a bit weird part, we have to understand the zodiac. The 12 signs of the zodiac were divided into 4 trigons, each consisting of 3 associated and equally spaced constellations. The watery trigon consists of Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio, while the fiery trigon consists of Sagittarius, Aries, and Leo. In Kepler's time, the location of a conjunction was as important as the conjunction itself. Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions happen at 20-year intervals and are 117 degrees apart. They shift westward or clockwise through the signs of a given trigon, remaining within the signs of one trigon for almost 200 years. They only begin a new cycle back at nearly their original position relative to the vernal equinox after approximately 794.4 years. Kepler believed the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction event had occurred only 8 times since the creation of the world. He was even waiting for a massing of Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn in 1604. Some astrologers in 1603 predicted a comet would be produced by the planet's close proximity late in 1604. But here's the thing. There's another theory. On June 17, 2 BC, a great conjunction of Venus and Jupiter occurred. During this event, Venus and Jupiter appeared almost as a single object, creating a double planet effect. Wait, let's step back. If Jesus was born between 4 and 8 BC, and King Herod died early in 4 BC, specifically on April 1, 4 BC, then a 2 BC event wouldn't fit the timeline. Also, we know Jesus was not born in December. I'm not entirely sure what to make of the astrologer's perspective. The conjunction theory is challenged because the Magi, as astrologers, professional astronomers of their time, would have likely identified Jupiter, which can be astonishingly bright on its own. So, if it was just a conjunction of known planets, why did they travel thousands of miles? Here is the problem. The Magi were skilled observers of the night sky with a lifetime of experience. They wouldn't just follow any light. If we look at meteors, for instance, we're talking about a scrap of metal and stone slamming into the atmosphere at tens of kilometers per second. Kinetic energy is transformed into heat and light as debris is vaporized about 100 kilometers above the ground, creating dramatic fireballs or bolides and golds or greens.
but a meteor is sudden and fleeting, lasting only seconds, which contradicts the biblical account. Then we have comets, essentially big, dirty snowballs from the outer solar system. These ice-rich bodies form glowing tails of gas and dust that can stretch across the sky for weeks. The church father Origen, who lived from about 184 to 254, suggested the star was a comet. This actually matches some records. Chinese imperial dynasties employed stargazers who recorded night sky events for horoscopes and calendars, and their annals showed 2 comets appeared during the period Jesus was born. One comet appeared in 5 BC in the constellation of Capricornus in March or April, and it was visible for 70 or more days. It was described as a sweeping star or broom star. A second comet appeared on April 24 in 4 BC in the constellation of Aquila, described as a Po comet, meaning tailless. Now, here's where it gets tricky. In the Mediterranean and Near East, comets were universally seen as harbingers of disaster, heralds of doom, death, disease, and disaster. Why would the Magi follow a bad omen? It's possible they were influenced by specific beliefs about comets described in Greco-Roman astrological writings, contemporary cuneiform omen texts, and the astrological geography of the time. Still, the comet of 5 BC is a compelling candidate. Using a novel numerical technique to compute its orbit, researchers found it could have passed very close to Earth in early June of 5 BCE. In the southern sky, as viewed from Jerusalem, its head would have been close to the horizon with its tail pointing vertically upward. This makes the comet appear to stand over the Earth because its coma and tail can look like an arrow. Even more intriguing is that this comet exhibited temporary geosynchronous motion, the first astronomical candidate identified that matches the description in Matthew. It fits the chronology of Jesus' birth, and because they are long-period comets, they can enter the solar system and not be seen again for a very long time. A comet's tail is formed when ice melts as it approaches the sun, and solar wind blows the material out into space, which explains why this broom star might have vanished. I've been digging into the texts, and something really strikes me about how these 2 accounts are structured. Matthew's genealogy of Jesus is traced through his father's lineage and divided into 3 major sections of 14 generations each, from Abraham to David, David to the Babylonian exile, and the Babylonian exile to the Messiah. Now, wait, why 14? It's not just a random number. In ancient Hebrew gematria, the letters of the name David, Dalet Val Dalet, add up to 14. So when an unnamed angel appears to Joseph and addresses him as Joseph, son of David, it's like a coded mathematical precision to the story. But then you look at Luke, and the whole thing changes. Luke's genealogy traces Jesus' lineage back to Adam, and even to God, which is a completely different scale. While Matthew calculates 42 generations from Jesus to Abraham, Luke calculates 54. They even differ on who Joseph's father was. Luke suggests Heli, while Matthew suggests Jacob. It's a bit jarring if you're looking for a perfectly synchronized clock. And then there's the details of the birth itself. Matthew mentions that Joseph and Mary did not consummate their marriage until after Jesus was born. Meanwhile, Gabriel appeared to Mary in Luke's account, whereas Matthew's focus is on that unnamed angel talking to Joseph. One more thing that really caught my eye, the word paideon. The Gospel of Matthew uses the Greek word paidion to describe Jesus, and it can mean infant or child. The Gospel of Luke also uses the word paidion specifically concerning Jesus' birth and his presentation at the temple. That distinction is crucial because if paidion means child rather than infant, it implies that some time had passed since the birth before the Magi arrived. It's not a neat little scene. It's a messy human timeline. But here is the real mystery. The star stopped over the place where the child was. In the biblical text, the star didn't just lead them, it stood over the child Jesus, coming to a halt to hang over the exact location. No natural object follows that kind of motion. When I look at the Greek, the word used for star is astera or astra, which is the root of the word astronomy. The term, aster, can refer to any heavenly body, including stars, planets, asteroids, comets, or meteors. Interestingly, the Bible does not mention that the star was particularly bright. It had no significance for anyone other than the Magi. Johannes Kepler, a 17th century astronomer, suggested the star was a nova or supernova explosion, but there is no Western record of a nova or supernova during the time of Jesus' birth. Chinese records contain only one possible mention of a nova or supernova, and there is no known supernova remnant from the time of Jesus' birth. This is why the supernova theory is contested. It was not recorded by anyone at the time, including Chinese astronomers who were observing the sky. But the peace of the manger is shattered almost immediately. Matthew describes a flight to Egypt, a desperate move to escape King Herod's attempt to kill Jesus. Meanwhile, the Magi, having received a divine warning in a dream, avoid the trap entirely. They take another route back to their country, bypassing Herod. Now, this is where the political reality gets messy. When Herod the Great died, the throne didn't just vanish. It went to his son, Herod Archelaus. Born in 22 BC in Judea, Archelaus was half Idumean and half Samaritan, a mix that made him look like an alien oppressor to his Jumla subject. His father's will named him ruler of Judea proper, Idumea, and Samaria, but he had to fight for it. In 4 BC, Archelaus actually went to Rome to defend his title against the claims of his brothers, Philip and Antipas. Emperor Augustus eventually confirmed him in possession of the largest portion of the kingdom, but he refused to call him a king. Instead, Augustus gave him the lesser title of ethnarch to make it clear who was dependent on Rome. It didn't last. By AD 6, Augustus ordered Archelaus to return to Rome because his subjects just wouldn't stop complaining. The future Emperor Tiberius tried to defend him in a trial in Rome, but it was failed. It didn't last. Archelaus was deprived of his throne and exiled to Gaul, where he eventually died around AD 18. So why does this matter for the story? According to the Gospel, according to Matthew 2:22, this is the exact reason the family didn't return back to Bethlehem. They settled in Nazareth in Galilee because of fear of Archelaus's tyranny. The shadow of the ethnarch was just as long as the shadow of his father. It's a strange contrast. We have this intimate, humble birth, Mary and Joseph taking Jesus to Jerusalem for purification rites required by the law of Moses, and then this massive cosmic scale. The 286-mile round trip from Nazareth, the grueling journey of the Magi, and the gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh all lead to a single,
improvised manger. I've been thinking about the scale of it all. While the professional astrologers from the East traveled thousands of miles to find a child, the local shepherds were just tending their fields. The cosmos was signaling, but only a few were looking up. And the mystery remains. Did that point of light stop over a stable in Bethlehem, or was it a symbol of a shift in the world? Thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed this look at the Star of Bethlehem, please consider subscribing.